we've looked at where it was confusing and it said that white is better somehow, but it didn't look like it, or black was winning, even though it looked dangerous. This position actually looks good for white. Your king on h1 feels much safer. There's a bishop on e4. That bishop is just defending across this exposed diagonal. This king on h8, if this queen gets back to the diagonal, it could be in big trouble. So that's why I'm thinking about the move d5 here. Let me free up the d4 square for my queen. And if you don't take this pawn on d5, I may take you on e6. I may put a rook behind my pawn and try to push it up the board. We saw Ding with a dangerous d pawn in that game 8. He didn't win the game, but he should have. I don't know. This position is starting to look very, very shaky for Jan Nepomniachtchi as he's on his back foot. His pieces are sort of scattered at this point. His knight on h4 is looking good, but it's alone in enemy camp. I really like Ding's position right now.
Let's continue that line, Robert, because d5 was the move which came to mind to me as well. Because black has the idea of playing f5 at some moment, and if e takes d5 here, queen to d4 will regain the pawn, and white will probably enter a very nice endgame. But after d5, I'm wondering the move e5, because black still has that threat of f5, and this is a concrete position. This is not immediately obvious how white is dealing with the threat of f5, which could become very dangerous as well. So what's the follow-up here? It's not immediately evident. I'm actually thinking of the idea queen c3 because I want to play knight takes f4, but then f5 comes, and there's bishop to f3 there. It's hard to, like, yeah, probably this doesn't work out because bishop f3 feels a bit shaky, right? Somehow. But
yeah, but the eval bar is like, it's, inching in one direction then back to a center. Even it's confused. Like, this position is that crazy. This king on h8 in the open. This king on h1, not the safest king either. Both knights on the rim, they're not looking particularly dim. They actually look quite aggressive and threatening. Fabi, d5 was just a move. I didn't really calculate ideas behind it. I'm being honest with everybody. You should come up with plans, not just moves. But I'm just looking at this position, and I want to go after this king. Maybe there's a better way. I don't have to rush. I mean, what is black's next move? Is it really f5?
I think so. I think f5 is coming. And the reason why d5 is a bit double-edged is because after f5, that bishop can go on the diagonal somewhere, and d5 cuts off a lot of those squares. For example, the c6 square is an option. And he plays queen c3, which is more logical without playing d5, indeed, because now after f5, white can play bishop to c6, for example, with the idea of d5 at a more opportune moment, and potential exchange sacrifices in the air. For example, if f5, bishop c6, and if black makes a waiting move just to illustrate what white might do next.
Oops, sorry, that's a mouse slip.
I mean, these guys are just playing instantly every move. It's amazing.
What's going on here? I mean, they've got more than 20 minutes on the clock. This is a world championship match. The title is at stake, and the players are just blitzing out their moves in a position where you could be lost in one move. One bad move, and the game is over.
Yeah, it's craziness. I mean, just to illustrate something, the tactical details are white can actually play the move knight to f6 here. It is a tactical option. It might not be a good option, but it doesn't lose the knight because queen f6, g5, and you pick up the rook on h6. And obviously, I don't know if knight f6 is the right move, but to play instantly in this position where there's some kind of sharp stuff like knight f6 on the cards, and who knows what happens. Potentially knight f6, f3 is actually very dangerous, but I don't know what that is. f3, queen f3, and then the queen can actually come potentially to d6, or queen f3. Actually, knight to h4 is super strong. So yeah, this actually just wins for black. So the knight would actually maybe have to go back to h5. So knight f6 not working out the way that white would hope, for sure. But yeah, I mean, you can see how d5 here is coming to mind as a very logical move. I think e5 is no longer what black wants, because now it just seems like it kills your bishop, and f5 is no longer a threat. So d5, bishop to e5, is that the answer? But bishop to e5, queen to d3? I don't know. Looks really nice for white to me. Looks really nice.
Yeah, great centralization. And just to show how easy it is for black to drop things, bishop takes g6 is already a threat with the bishop loose on e5 over here. I mean, this is just a hectic position, and both sides are playing quickly. Now, they have played 32 moves. They need to reach move 40 before gaining time. There is no increment, and they don't have that much time considering how difficult this position is to calculate, but it almost feels like they're putting calculation on the back burner because they just want to speed up, and their nerves, there's exhaustion. It's just mentally fatigued considering how tricky this game has been. But I'm looking at this position, and Ding Liren must be thrilled to be here. It looked like he might lose the match today, not because the match would have officially been over, but being down by 2 points with 2 games to go when Jan has looked pretty stable. Good luck to you. But now all of a sudden, Jan looks shaky, and this is Ding's chance. He can't pull a game 8 when he was winning, but let Jan back into it and hold the draw. He needs to take advantage right here and now.
Robert,
Yeah.
you're saying putting calculation on the back foot. I know one person who's not going to be happy about that. Our friend James Canty, because it has to be calculation over everything. They needed to have that chat with James about this position, and Jan would have been a happy man. But instead, now he's just playing so fast. He's blitzing it out. Fabi, do you think this is Jan's way of trying to get into those time scrambles, of putting Ding into a pressure situation? He's seen Ding collapse in that. Is that the hope, the big hope for Jan right now?
Well, I'm reminded of some advice by one of my former coaches because I used to, as a kid, play absolutely instantly in any position, very often to my detriment. And he said that, when you have a bad position, uh, it makes sense to try to press your opponent on time. Like, let's say your opponent's in time trouble and you have a bad position. It makes sense because you're objectively in bad shape anyway. You might be losing, and probably your best chance is to bluff your way out of it. When you have a good position, you don't need to bluff. You just have a good position. All you need to do is find the right moves to convert your advantage. And so there was no point earlier in the game. Jan's decision to put pressure on Ding with natural moves, with all these intuitive moves that we really liked, like Queen to G5, Knight to E7, Knight to H4, all this stuff, Rook to G8. His play was absolutely brilliant. We can't fault him for a single decision because it was like world class, or even better than world class, I would say. Like, the best of the best for most of this game. But once he reached a winning position, he didn't slow down. That was the moment where he had the objective factor. He didn't need to try to bluff Ding or put pressure on him because the pressure was in the position. So again, I just want to reiterate that these aren't chess mistakes. This is not about chess anymore. This is just about psychology and um, keeping it together under really strong pressure of a world championship match. Uh, that's purely what this is. Obviously, both of these guys know the complexity is super intense in this position. So just by pure logic, not even thinking about the position, in complex positions, you need to take time to figure out the right path for anyone. Nobody will intuitively, unless you're obviously an engine. And we even see the engine sometimes, adjust its evaluation based on the amount of time it takes to think. So if even an engine is confused here, how can a human not be, right? These guys really should have been taking more time, especially Jan, because Ding, I understand bad position, you want to kind of blitz it out, standard sort of practice for defense to try to blitz your opponent. But for Jan, really, he dropped the ball by not taking more time.
And you
Bad
see Ding,
position
by
and
the way,
bad
right there?
memories. Yeah, Robert, I was just about to say the same thing. Ding, a couple of minutes back, looked like he was about to make a move, but he looks so uneasy right now. He looks like he's so much under pressure, feeling the heat of the moment, and that's what he has to make sure doesn't happen. He still has some critical choices to make. He still has some big decisions to make. He reaches out and makes the move queen to bishop to G2, retreating with the bishop. That kind of fights against the ideas of F3, defends that H3 pawn. I see our eval bar still pretty much remains around the even point. But Ding there, Robert, definitely giving signs that he's not feeling confident currently in this position.
Yeah, it's a different kind of pressure because earlier in this game, he was in under big pressure. He was probably almost lost over the board. Now he's under pressure because he knows he's escaped, and he's like, I'm right back in this, but I still need to win. I still need to reach move 40. I only have 13 minutes left. I don't mind bishop g2. I don't care if the engine says it's a mistake because black's best move might be something that's hard to find. And this position is really one where I don't want to play it ever. I'm looking at this, I'm scared because with both sides, I would make 20,000 mistakes and you don't even get 20,000 moves. So I'm just looking at this and I just don't blame either player, but I do agree with Fabi. Earlier, Jan should have slowed down. That was the big turning point in this game. If Jan had slowed down, he would not have given all this counterplay because Ding's position is just more free, it's more flowing, it's just more fun for him to play. So, by the way, let's talk about bad pieces. There's a rook on h6. Earlier, that was an aggressive piece. Now it can't move. It's stuck over here staring into a knight that's well defended by a pawn. The bishop back to g2 took f5 out of the equation. You want to play f5 in many of these positions, you're just going to drop this pawn on e6. That is not acceptable. So what does black do here? d5 is still a threat in most of these positions with the king over here on h8. This is really tough positioning. And I think that Ding did not want to allow the bishop to e5. And that's why he first brought his bishop back. So d5 can no longer be met by bishop e5.
And Yan answers your question. What does black want to do? He brings the queen back into the attack. He was on the offense, went back to defend the rook on the defense, and now back to the offensive place. Queen h4, so still hitting ideas of the h3 pawn, but more importantly, the f2 pawn. Super tender there. And Ding takes an immediate decision. He just simply guards it, passes the ball back to Yan, saying, I've got the ideas of d5, all the points that you were making earlier, Robert. And it's again, practical problems, but this time for Yan to solve.
I'm really tempted by white to play d5. I understand why he's keeping it in reserve, and it makes sense to. But positionally speaking, if white can force d5, e5, which it seems to do, that black kind of has to play e5 after d5, this is a great thing for white, no? I mean, like, endgames suddenly are probably winning for white. As you mentioned, Robert, that rook on h6 is really in bad shape. I mean, it's not trapped. It does perform some useful functions in terms of if the knight on h5 moves, then obviously the rook can become an attacking piece. But if we imagined that the queens came off the board and white had bishop to f3, like, the rook also can get trapped potentially with g5. So it's very often in danger of getting just lost on h6. And what does black do here after rook e2? It's not obvious the next move.
Well, I think this is why he didn't play d5. Quick little analysis here. It's not going to be long, but for everybody wondering, why wouldn't you just give a check? Sometimes it's better to store. The threat is better than the execution. After d5, e5, black can successfully play f5 in the near future, and that's scary for the white king in the corner. But in the game, after rook to e2, a very quiet move, if you play f5, now the rook, which was defending, says thank you very much for the pawn, and d5 will result in a mating attack against the king. So I actually really like rook e2. It takes away black's main offensive threat and says you need to find a move because you're not going to sacrifice an exchange. I can just take right back and my king is perfectly safe thanks to the bishop. And let's not forget that white is up a pawn on the queen side. If black just shuffles back and forth, at some point white can throw those pawns up the board and try to get a pass pawn. So I'm really worried for Jan Nepomniachtchi. I know he's up 7 minutes, but I really feel like his position is far more difficult to play. I'm struggling to see moves here. You just brought your queen to h4. That's a good square, but you're not threatening anything. This rook on f8, does it have to stay here for some reason? Can it move to a square like d8? I don't even know if that does anything.
Yeah, if I were Jan here, I would be in a state of panic. This is a position where you need to immediately generate ideas, or you could easily lose the game. Because, yeah, it's only the dynamic factors that can maybe save you here. You're down material. So that's the first thing. That white is up a pawn. Black is the one who needs to prove compensation. And the other thing is that the d5 idea at any moment could result in your king getting mated. So you have to both create counterplay and keep an eye on your king, which is very weak. And I don't see how to do it. f5 is like the most obvious move. I'm actually thinking about some kind of crazy a5 here. Just because plays f5?
It's losing the spot!
And oh my gosh.
Rook takes e6?
Drops another pawn.
What does
That's
he want?
the third pawn that Yan gives up.
F takes g4, let's d5, bishop e5, rook e5. I don't see the idea there for black. It's
What
just
is he
checkmate,
doing?
I'm shocked. I'm confused.
Is this Yan on tilt?
Rook e6, I don't understand it. f3 is his idea?
So f3. So we need to analyze this.
It has to be
e6.
f3, otherwise you resign, no? f3 or
Right,
you resign?
d5 is devastating. So f3. So your point, just to show that white could get checkmated if your bishop were to take. That would be silly because you get checkmated in one. Okay, so f3. If queen takes f3, you're trying to take on g4 and expose an attack against this queen over
It has an easy refutation. d5, bishop to e5, rook takes e5, f takes g2, and I think just maybe king g2 also wins, but king h2 is a very simple solution, I think. And yeah, the king is safe. F takes g4 leads to mate after rook to f5, among probably other moves as well. Or rook g5, whatever you want. Knight takes e5, queen e5 will, yeah, white is.
And he played it. He played rook
The
e6.
board.
This is complete craziness. I
This
I
is
can't
bizarre.
imagine this.
This is bizarre. I don't know what Yan has been doing for the last 5 moves, but it's been an absolute disaster. Every single move he's lost out on an advantage, given the chance to Ding to strike back. And did you see that Ding actually looked at Yan? He looked at Yan there with this puzzled expression. Yan has blown this away. Rook e6 on the board. No way for Yan to come back. If f3 doesn't work, that is the third pawn that Yan has just given to Ding for free. What is this? This is supposed to be a world championship match.
And this is why Ding Liren played rook e2. That was a really subtle idea. It was just defending, of course, a pawn that was under attack. But he made it so Yan could not successfully play this active move f5. So I think that Ding Liren deserves a ton of credit. Yes, Jan Nepomniachtchi is absolutely collapsing at this stage of the World Championship Game 12. But Ding has created some problems for Jan. Jan's created problems for himself as well. And now the game is just over. There's no way to save this king.
Did you see Yan there? It looked like he was so angry at himself for what he allowed. He couldn't even look at the board. He was just talking to himself, just in complete disbelief of how he's just left the title, the World Championship crown, just slip out of his hand in this game 12. Jan Nepomniachtchi feeling the heat, Ding Liren in driving seat, is not just about losing this game and Ding striking back. But if that was to happen at this moment, Jan knowing what he messed up, Fabi, the momentum of the match will completely shift in Ding's favor with this comeback.
Yeah, it's difficult to because on the one hand, I really feel for Jan in this moment. It's clear that the pressure got to him, and I think that it got to him because he probably realized that he was on the verge of winning a game which would probably win him the match. We can't say with certainty, but with great likelihood, 2-point margin would be too much to handle. And at that very moment, when we were already calling for, like, maybe Jan is going to become world champion very soon, every move, like, we can basically criticize pretty much every move he made. It became like a bullet game, just instant moves, and within the span of 10 moves, at least like 7 serious mistakes. Just very, like, the quality just went basically to zero. So, and with 40 minutes on the clock, not like when Ding collapsed in Game 7, it was shocking, but it was still very much associated with time, trouble, panic. This was unprovoked mistakes, just pressure of the match dictated what happened in the end of this game. And now he's of course, as soon as rook takes e6 happened, he understood what he had done to his position, but it was already headed that direction. Like, he had gone from completely winning to like, just compare the position before b4 and before f5. It's the same position without his b and c pawns, exactly the same. He's just missing his b and c pawns. Besides that, the position is identical. We've maneuvered a lot, but the b and c pawns somehow magically disappeared from the board, and obviously something went pretty wrong for that to happen. So
Yes.
yeah, just he's definitely kicking himself. Who knows what this means for the rest
This
of
is
the match.
heartbreaking to watch. To watch Jan right now is pain, because he can feel it. He's talking to himself. He's not being able to look at the board. This was a big missed opportunity. Jan Nepomniachtchi from a completely winning position, and it was flawlessly played by Jan up to that point. Ding hanging on by a thread, and then just a bad move, one after the other, has seen a complete collapse. And at this World Championship stage, I'm not used to seeing something like this. We usually see play which is, we've seen the highest accuracy by these two players in the previous games. And Robert, this has been shocking and currently just heartbreaking to watch Jan on the board.
It's been shocking, but if you think of the match overall, is this the first time where Ding Liren received some luck? Because when I think of Game 7, where he got in time trouble, he was the one who was outplaying Jan Nepomniachtchi. In Game 8, he had a winning position. Now, Jan put up some very stubborn defense, but Ding Liren outplayed him, had a winning position, and didn't win the game. So I feel like this actually is a moment where Ding Liren is experiencing some fortune because his position was terrible, and it happens to be very late in the match, and we'll get some recency bias. But if I think for a second and look at the match as a whole, Ding Liren, I didn't think he deserved to be trailing based on the way he played. So I feel like for Ding Liren, this is a huge moment. He is bouncing back. He is about to level this match up. And I wouldn't say he is undeserving of being 6-6 after game 12. So he could have lost the match in this game, and that is fortunate for him. But if I just take a step back, if I look at the match as a whole, Ding Liren has not been a worse player. I think they've been very level, and so a 6-6 score feels about right.
Yeah, I don't think that we can talk about luck because this has been up and down, and for sure, Ding is not lucky to be in this position. Or, I mean, maybe considering what the position was 30 minutes ago, we can say that. But as a whole, yeah, obviously he's counting his lucky stars because things could have been a lot worse. But both these guys made mistakes throughout this match. They had their chances. They missed their chances as well. I can think of like one moment where Jan will definitely regret earlier in the match, which was when he decided to take the exchange, right? And he allowed this monster knight on f5 and in the English game, reverse Sicilian game earlier in the match. I think it was probably game 4. So there's definitely some moments they can both regret so far. For Ding, of course, game 7 and game 8, that was a nightmare stretch for him because he could have been 2 out of 2 instead of half out of 2 from those 2 games.
Oh my God. What we're witnessing right now is just, it's unsurpassed. It's something that we haven't seen happen before. This, to me, looks like Ding has used up one of his 9 lives today, surviving this one. And simply because Yan played such a great game from the start. He took his chances. He went for shot castle. He went into that deep dark forest we keep coming back to of complications. He did not shy away from it. Some brave, fearless decisions. I'm still thinking, Robert, how do you explain the last few moves by Yan being so close to it, but move by move, just undoing everything that you've created, being so close to becoming world champion? Yes, not for certainty, but for all practical purposes, it was clear. And Yan right now is fighting the demons in his head because he's also thinking about what he's missed out on his game. Not just the fact that he's completely lost, but the fact that he perhaps lost the world championship title with this game.
It's an impossible question to answer, and the reason why is it's an impossible experience, impossible situation to replicate without being in the world championship stage. Now, we have somebody who played a world championship match against Magnus Carlsen. That's Fabiano with us, but I think one of the big differences is that Jan Nepo had the lead, and he was about to make it a 2-point lead. And so, Fabi, I mean, you can maybe comment on this. I don't know. It's kind of speculation to some extent. But nerves had to be a huge factor. And the exhaustion after playing now a 12th game of chess, you know that these players have been giving it their all. They really must be just out of gas.
Yeah, exhaustion is definitely playing a huge part in this. And I think also the weight of the moment. Because for sure Jan realized, some part of him understood that he's very, very close in this game to winning the game and to making that huge step forward to becoming world champion. And the weight of that also can weigh on you. It can get in your head a bit. The excitement of potentially winning, also a brilliant game. I'm sure he felt like he was playing a brilliant game. Winning a brilliant game with the black pieces. The whole narrative of it is in your head like I'm going to win a world championship match with one of the best games I've ever played, just slowly outplaying a player as good as Ding from an equal position, like just from the opening, equal, maybe even slightly worse from black. So all of this was in his head. I'm sure that this contributed in great part to why. And I can feel. I think all of us, everyone in the chat, can also feel the pain of losing a chess game. We've all been there. So
this is brutal. It's the pain, the beauty of chess, but also just how cruel a game it is. And we can see that on Yan right now. And Robert, he's fighting a bad position, but right now he's fighting his mind. And how difficult is it for him to even try to create chances here? If we just look at it from a practical purpose, is there a way now for Yan to try to hold it, or is it completely a lost cause?
He might resign. No, this game is over and he knows it. I mean, I don't know if this was just he forgot the e6 pawn was hanging directly, or if he was relying on something, but there isn't anything here. And I feel for Jan. I mean, you look at him, right? He is absolutely devastated because he had a world championship title just right there in his hands, and it just fell out of his grasp. And now all of a sudden, he's dead lost in this game. It's about to be 6-6. He does get the white pieces tomorrow, but his mentality has to shift. He needs to play for a win. He needs to play something, not, he doesn't have to go all in, of course, but he needs to start playing ambitiously. Whereas if he had drawn today, or if he had won today, he would have just played a solid game. So I think he's just going back in this game thinking, what was I doing? How could I not get the most out of this position? How could I not win? But he is going to resign. He is going to lose this game, and he will need to clear his head for tomorrow.
Jan is in agony right now.
Yeah, there's no way to fight. D5 is coming no matter what move you make. It's just D5 next. It's there's nothing left, no hope left for black. Yeah, this is. I think his task now will be to recover mentally from this one. This is going to be a tough one to recover from.
And just to push back on that, that's exactly what it was, right, Fabi? It's not just about Ding making his comeback in this match, but Jan being so close to closing the match. Having a winning position with the black pieces, Jan did it once in game 2. He took the first win with black, and he almost did it at the most critical point. Almost being the key word here. But it just looked like he went suddenly on a self-destruct mode. Did he start playing on Ding's clock? Was he so confident that he was blitzing out moves and overlooking things? Questions which not only we are asking as commentators, as chat, but Jan also has to answer for himself what happened. And of course, if Ding takes this one, Jan will not even have time. There's no rest day to recover before the next game. And look at Jan. He's unable to look at the position right now.
Yeah. I think that, yeah, I've had these moments as well where you do something and then afterwards you're like, how could I have possibly done this? And then it's just going through your head like all the moments in the game where there was some good move, some good chance, or just thinking back on that position after a4, like, why didn't I just play a6 and let my opponent stir in his thoughts of how to create some counterplay rather than I think we really need to maybe go back to that moment in the analysis because like this is just a ruin of a position.
Yeah.
And we might see, Robert, as you mentioned, a resignation here because it's difficult to even come up with a move for black.
Wow. And he's been in a 13-minute think, but again, it's not just the lines. It's just hard to come up with a response currently with the black pieces. Rook takes e6, picking up that third pawn by Ding Liren has just left Jan with a completely lost, busted position here, which means that Ding is right now staring at a comeback for the third time. Jan continues to be in disbelief. He is running down on the clock as well. We haven't seen that happen, something that Jan probably did not expect it, even in the worst nightmare from the position that he was coming from. He's down to 5.5 minutes on the clock, but it's not about the clock. The position is completely lost for black. The threat of d5 on the board. Nothing saving black's king. Jan was the one who was on the attack throughout, putting that pressure on Ding's king. And Ding also realizes it. He knows he's keeping his calm, he's keeping his composure, but this is a big moment for Ding as he's staring at his third comeback at a very critical moment where he will equalize the match going into the final 2 games of the World Championship.
And you can see it on, in Ding, and he just is more determined than ever. He had his back against the proverbial wall. He was in trouble. He went for it. It was backfiring. Everything was going wrong for him, but he fought very hard to get back into this game. And Jan, he was his own worst enemy. That quick decision making, something we've said about Jan in the past. We thought that he's changed a lot, winning the candidates twice, playing a world championship match back in 2021 against Magnus Carlsen. But sometimes, worst habits come back at the worst possible moment. And Jan is going to be very upset with himself for some of his quick decisions, allowing Ding Liren some much needed counterplay. And right now, Jan has no counterplay of his own. He is down material, he is down on time. His king is about to be knocked down because he might just resign here. This is 1-0, and that means we'll have a 6-6 match.
Yeah, I think it's. I mean, I do kind of see a move to resign. It suddenly came to me. It's the move knight to e5. Because if rook h6, knight g4, there's the d5 is knight by bishop e5. There's actually a threat of knight takes f2. It's a pretty strong threat. It probably doesn't work out for black anyway, but you know,
Bobby, I think at this point, Jan is just incapable of making a move right now. He's just in complete shock.
no, I'm just trying to like find some move not to resign the game on the spot, at least to create the chance for a mistake for your opponent. But after knight e5, I think rook takes e5 is like just very, very clinical and easily crushing black. So even knight e5, we're doing that. But yeah, here it's not too difficult to refute.
It's painful to watch this, honestly. I'm looking at Jan. I'm seeing that just pure devastation, that anger. It gets to you. I mean, as a fan of chess, in addition to commentating, you always want to see great games, all these great fighters. But it's painful as somebody who's played a lot of chess to lose a game like this. I mean, I've never been on this stage, of course, Fabi. You have been, but I think we kind of all can understand what Jan is going. This is a very human moment, and I feel for him. Even though if you're a Ding Liren fan, you're thrilled. I think even then you're still upset for Jan just because of how he's feeling right now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's obviously very, very painful to lose in general, and especially on the biggest stage. And yeah, we saw exchange sack, queen takes h5, will likely maybe f3. I don't know. F3, d5 seems to seem d5, bishop e5, rook e5. There's a little bit to calculate. F takes g2, king takes g2, knight to f4. The king runs. Instead, he takes. I think d5 here, followed by d6 is very clinical. King g8, d6, and that's the black king is getting hunted, and white is up a lot of material. So d6 quickly played and resigned.
Handshakes, and that is it. D6 on the board. It is game over. Ding Liren comes back in the match after a lot of twists and turns in this one. Jan Nepomniachtchi resigns in that position. Wow, we've got a match on our hands.
I'm impressed that Jan is willing to discuss the game after, because obviously it's such a bad moment for him in this match, and he must be completely disgusted with how it all ended today.
That was a big heartbreak moment for Jan, who was completely winning, and he was better for the most part of the game. But Ding Liren, hanging by a thread, used his opportunity. We saw a collapse by Jan, move after move. And with that, going into game 13, it means we've got the level score. And of course, now for Jan as well, dealing with this psychologically, not just the result, but the way the game went, how close he was to actually wrapping up the match. This is going to be a tough night for Jan Nepomniachtchi.
Yeah, I don't know how he's going to be able to sleep, and I definitely don't know how he's going to be able to answer questions in that press conference. But Ding Liren is back in it, so as much sadness as Jan Nepomniachtchi has, there's a bit of Schadenfreude where it's going to be a thrilling experience for Ding Liren because he was about to be eliminated. Now he is leveled up. He has tied this match, and I mean, this was a very interesting game, even though it was imperfect.
And it started with a slow opening, but we saw so many critical moments in this one. Fabi, take us through the action and the big moments that we had where Jan could have actually wrapped up the game.
It feels like a million years ago when we were discussing the intricacies of this unusual bishop d7 move. But so much happened in this game that the opening feels like a distant memory. So bishop to d3 happened here, knight to c6, short castle, bishop to g4. And we were discussing the best way to play for both sides, but perhaps Ding did not find the best way in this position. Rook to e1. He played e6, knight to f1, bishop d6, and here a very interesting move by Ding, bishop to g5. This was actually kind of an important branching moment because although bishop g5 or knight g3 are both fine moves, this is the one that started the whole craziness that persisted for the rest of the game. Short castle, excellent move by Jan, and he continued to play excellently. Bishop takes f6, gf6, knight to g3, f5. We were kind of expecting this might happen. h3, bishop f3, queen f3, and here to avoid the potential knight takes f5 sacrifice, Jan played knight to e7, very interesting move. Inviting knight h5, as played by Ding, king to h8, g4. Obviously, both sides are staking out their way to attack on the king side now. G4 was played, rook to g8 played to stop gf5, and after king to h1, knight to g6. Excellent move. Here we started to see the difficulties for Ding, as knight to h4 was coming on the board, and he started to maybe drift a little bit. Yeah, gf5 met by knight h4 indeed.
I just want to show this one more time because it was such a brilliant tactical variation where this looks winning for white, but in fact, black gets there first. Throwing a check, throwing another check, and then the moves that were really difficult is bishop e7, stopping the white queen from checking here and delivering mate. And after f6, it looks like mate or a win of a piece is unavoidable, but there is some brilliant stuff. Knight f5, cutting off circulation between queen and bishop on h7. And if you take this knight, which is attacking the queen, then you get checkmated because queen c4 takes away the king's escape route. And after rook e2, rook h1 is mate. So this was gorgeous tactical possibilities. Didn't happen, but still worth showing.
Yeah, this was one of the lines we were fascinated with. And instead, Ding played bishop c2, although we were speculating that maybe rook to g1 was a better move. And after bishop c2, Jan started to play absolutely brilliant chess. Knight to h4. The queen moved. Now rook to g6 came. And now he played rook to g1. Yeah, that's right. And f4, queen d3, and now queen to e7. Excellent idea of putting the queen on g5. I mean, all of these moves were perfect. It's like brilliant. He's just blockading on the dark squares and slowly going to break through on the king side with an attack. Rook e1, queen g5. And in desperation, Ding played c4, a pawn sacrifice, which probably doesn't work out, but the pressure was mounting. So maybe a practical decision. This wasn't a bad one. dc4, queen c3. He's eyeing some d5 ideas, but Jan played an excellent move. b5, not worried about bishop takes g6, because after h6 the knight on h5 would be trapped. Now Ding played the move a4. Very logical, and I think this was a crucial moment in the game. If Jan had played a6...
We will come back to that. We've got the players in the press conference. Let's head over to Astana.
Hello everyone, welcome at the press conference of the round 12. Today the game was won by Ding Liren and the current score is tied 6-6. My first question goes to Ding. Around move 28 to 30, moves both sides, you started to blitz out the moves and there were a lot of inaccuracies. And there is a quote from Fabiano Caruana who said, "There is no longer about chess, it's pure nerves. Every move is a mistake now." Would you agree to this statement?
Well, I agree with the first part of his words. It's not about chess, since I know the quality is very low, but actually I'm not so nervous at the point. I just thought at one point I feel it's total silence in the playing hall, and I didn't feel anybody watching the games. It seems the playing field, well, it seems to be the very important game, but I didn't feel it at all. I have to told myself that it's quite important. I have to focus on. I didn't feel any kinds of emotional at that point. Yeah. But yeah, the game itself is quite bad. I think my mistake comes earlier as bishop c2. I should have played rook g1, I guess. Bishop h2 and then rook f1. Maybe that's an improvement over the game.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. And Jan, would you agree to this statement of Fabian Caruana that it's no longer about chess, but it's about the nerves now?
No, I guess it's still about chess, and yeah, not the best thing to do, like to lose supposedly winning position. I guess after c4, like something like rook c8, provoking c5 will be like very, very clean. And then basically white has no counterplay, so it's pretty much, in my opinion, pretty much over, since cd5 doesn't work. Yeah, but I somehow decided to go for some forcing lines and met the consequences. So yeah, I think it's pretty much chess, but yeah, at some point, of course, it was a big mess. But yeah, once I found out that, okay, this, I mean, I'm not sure, after bishop e4, so strangely, I didn't see like any ideas for me anymore. Yeah, so perhaps, okay, what I did was reasonable, but yeah, clearly it was an important moment. So yeah, but happens.
Thank you. Ding, at what moment have you realized that the tables turned on your side?
Well, I didn't understand his choice b4 and then didn't follow by knight f3. That gave me very easier play, and my queen had developed to a very good square. So, but after bishop e4, I realized I was maybe already better at that point.
Right. Have you considered actually to capture the rook on g6 instead of playing queen to b7?
If it takes.
So you considered, but you disliked that move?
Yeah, I consider it a little bit. Yeah, but I think when I saw queen b7, then followed by bishop e4, I thought it's quite good for white.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. One last question from me, and then we'll go to press to ask the questions. Jan, you played very sharp moves and got a great advantage on the king side. When did things started to go wrong exactly for you?
As I mentioned already, yeah, probably the whole concept, like with capturing on c4, was unnecessary. So like rook c8 and keeping the center closed. I guess it was pretty much it. But yeah, what to do?
Okay, fair enough. Do we have questions now in the press? Please, Leoncho.
Leoncho Garcia from El País. Today I have the same question for both. Millions of chess amateurs all over the world were following the game with the help of very powerful computers, which were saying that black was winning for a lot of time, and then at a certain moment that white was winning. But both of you are human beings, so I think it will be very interesting if you can explain as best as possible how were your feelings during the critical part of the game. For instance, Ian, did you feel completely winning? Liren, did you feel totally lost?
Let's start first, Jan, with you.
Yeah, indeed, it looks like winning. I think the whole like attack on the king side doesn't work here, but yeah, it looked promising. Yeah, but still, you like even if you are winning, you still got to be precise till the end, and clearly I wasn't precise today.
What about you, Ding?
Well, I thought I was better out of the opening, but after he played a series of very good moves, the table had turned around, and I realized after he played f4, and then queen e7 quite strong, also queen g5 the best. After that, I thought I was nearly lost, so I have to complicate the waters by playing c4, queen c3.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Next question, please.
Эльмира Мирзоева, телеканал Матч ТВ. Вопрос к Яну непомнящему. Ян, вообще в целом вы были довольны тем, как сложился для вас именно дебют, вот этот маневр слон d7, слон g4, вы перед этим думали, вспоминали, то есть это то, что называется, играли по книге?
Jan, the question is to you. My name is Elmira Mirzoeva from Match TV channel. Jan, were you glad with your moves bishop d7 and then bishop g4? So did you play by the book? Could you explain?
Yeah, I guess, да, я полагаю, что...
Jan,
да.
please answer in Russian and we will translate, yes.
Да, ну, вроде бы, это, мне кажется, часть подготовки, по крайней мере, итогами дебюта я был доволен.
It was part of my preparation, and by the results of the debut, I was happy with.
Right, next question.
And I have a question to Dean. Dean, were you surprised with bishop d7, bishop g4, all this maneuver? Have you seen it before?
I'm quite happy to see bishop d7 come over the board when I was sitting in the rest room, because maybe he's worried about bishop b5 if he played knight c6, but actually knight c6 was the best move according to my analysis, so it means he's a tempo down comparing to the normal position.
Thank you. Do we have a next question?
Hello, Maria Milyanova, chess.com. I have a question for Ding. On the move 12, when you took on f6, you spent half an hour thinking on that move. Coincidentally, it's also move 12 in the second game where you did not expect the capture on f6. Is there any psychology behind thinking for so long on that move, or is it completely irrelevant?
Well, I was choosing between bishop f6 and knight g3. On knight g3, I saw knight h5, h3, bishop takes, queen takes, knight takes, pawn takes, bishop takes. And then maybe rook e3, but here maybe bishop d6 also works. So I have to choose between these two seemingly equal variations. It's very hard to decide which one is better. In the end, I think maybe just have to take the knight first.
So you were just thinking about the lines. There's nothing psychological.
Yeah, but after he takes a pawn, it reminds me a little bit
it did
of
remind you.
the games.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you. Do we have more questions in press? I would ask myself one question to Jan. If you were surprised by the opening choice of Ding when he played movie 3 call system, as it has a reputation that it's not so ambitious move.
No, I wasn't surprised.
You are prepared for it?
A little.
All right. Next question.
Hi, Aditya from ChessBase India. Question to Ding. When you went a4, if Nepo had gone for a6, what was your idea?
Yes, a4, a6, maybe take d5, e5, and rook a1.
Did you see that on the board, or was that your preparation?
No. it's already in the middle game. I was totally lost. No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I think now it's time of the Twitter segment. Please, Jessie, bring the questions.
Jessie February here. My first question is for Jan. What were you discussing at the board right after the game?
I guess instead of f5, which was not so fortunate, I also calculated f3, queen f3, f5, but yeah, we discussed some lines afterwards.
And for both of you, if the games were to go to the tiebreak, which time control would you feel more comfortable playing? What do you think the odds would be?
I think we will go with you first.
Well, I'm quite happy to play 25 plus 10 seconds with 4 rounds. Yeah, yeah, because I have played many tournaments like this time control.
Right, Jan?
I mean, there are like 2 classical games, so that's not the time to think about it.
Okay, thank you. Next question.
My last question is for Jan. This is not the first time you've managed to open up the G file and used it to attack. Did you feel you were better at any point after G takes?
Yeah, good question. I think after knight g6, okay, after all this g4 plan, black is massively better. Might be not winning, but surely black has an upper hand. And I guess the fun part that, like, I guess instead of 5, okay, f3, queen f3, f5, queen e3, like whatever, like knight f4 takes and f takes g4. Should also be quite alright for black, but yeah, happens, as I said.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Do we have more questions? This can be the last chance for the press to ask the question. Otherwise, I would like to conclude today's press conference. Tomorrow, the round 13 will start at 3 p.m. local time. So thank you very much.
Liren wins game 12. With that, he is back in the match. The only decisive game of the second half comes at a very critical moment, and what a game this was. With that win, we've got a level score with 6-6. Jan Nepomniachtchi has so much to deal with after what has just happened. We saw them at the press conference. Jan seemed composed given what he had just what we had just experienced, what we have just witnessed. He was frustrated on the board, disappointed, angry with what had just happened. And after 5 draws, we get 1 decisive game, a big win. Sorry, 4 draws. We get a big win by Ding Liren. For Jan Nepomniachtchi, Fabi, in your experience, the match is level, far from over. What does he need to do to get back from what happened today?
Well, I could say my match was the same after 12 games, the same score, but we had gotten there in slightly different ways. Yeah, and there were some adventures in my match, but nothing like this. I can't think of a World Championship match this adventurous until maybe going back to 2006 to Paul of Kramnik. I mean, that was this level of crazy, but this is pretty wild stuff. And at the moment, Ding definitely has the upper hand in terms of the psychology. I'm sure that he's absolutely thrilled. I mean, he could have basically been out of it, and now it's pure 50-50. If we look at the numbers, if we think about what happened to get there today, the chance that Jan had, and how he'll probably be ruminating over that for the rest of the night, we can speculate about how that will affect him. We have seen the players have shown a tendency to come back from tough losses, and they've struck back very often in the very next game. Will that happen tomorrow? It's impossible to say, but definitely will be exciting to watch.
Yeah, I mean, those draws were just the calm before the storm, because today's game was topsy-turvy. Jan Nepomniachtchi, he had the World Championship match. I mean, he was so close to pretty much winning it today, and yet he slipped. Ding Liren, much more confident now than he could have been during this game, and he's got great chances. He does have the black pieces tomorrow. As Fabi said, we saw earlier in the match they were trading decisive victories. First, Ding would won game 4, then Jan in game 5, Ding in game 6, Jan in game 7. So Jan has proven that he can win the day after a loss. He is able to bounce back, but I think this is heartbreaking. I don't just think he'll be ruminating on it tonight. I think he's going to be thinking about this game for the rest of his life, and whether or not he does eventually become the world champion. So it was a really hectic game. The fans were treated to chaos, but I think the players, I mean, they're going to need to find a way to settle down, because tomorrow is a whole new day.
And a really big one. And unfortunately for Jan, no rest days, no time to recover from what he went through today. We could see the agony in him, so close to actually just closing down the match, but a move after move collapse. And Ding Liren took that point. Now, Ding will be playing with the black pieces. The good news for Jan is that he starts tomorrow with white. What are you expecting, Fabi, with the action that we've seen today? Will Jan try to create his chances and try to take risks with white, or will he just want to stop the bleeding?
I think we will see first move e4. I think Jan should stick to his guns and probably will stick to his guns. At the moment, it doesn't make sense to take huge risks, because at the moment, after such a traumatic game, of course, if you get chances, take them, but don't try to push too hard. Don't try to force the matter, because 2 draws and going to a playoff, at this point, I think Jan should be happy with that. And we wouldn't have said that yesterday, but he doesn't want to spiral out of control, to go on tilt, as they say. I think that He should, still play ambitiously tomorrow, but not in a way where he ever risks losing control. His number one priority should be quality, good chess, and keeping control of the situation.
As he has to keep things under control, and he doesn't have that much time to recover. But Jan Nepomniachtchi, Ding Liren, two incredible fighters. They will be back tomorrow for a very crucial game 13. We still have two classical games. The players gave their thoughts on the tie breaks, on what happens, their feelings if it went into playoff. And Jan mentioned, well, we still have two classical games. It is too early to call. Robert, what are the chances of this match actually going into the playoffs?
It's impossible to predict at this point because we didn't think that Ding Liren was going to win this game, and he did. It's 6-6. So by the scoreboard, if we just looked at that, we'd say great chances. Typically at the highest level, they draw a lot, so we might see a couple draws, a split point, and then we will end our World Championship in tiebreaks. But I just don't know what to expect anymore. I don't know if Jan will be able to rebound, recover from today's debacle, or if Ding Liren, with his newfound confidence, if he can try to hold tomorrow and win game 14. There's a lot that remains to be seen.
This kind of back and forth, these kind of comebacks, this kind of chess we haven't seen at the World Championship. Well, Fabi, you mentioned you have to go back in history to the 2006 World Championship match between Veselin Topalov and Vladimir Kramnik to think of this level of drama that we're experiencing at the World Championship between Jan and Ding. What do you think is going on? What's the reason for that, Fabi?
Well, at this point, I really think tiredness and nerves plays a huge part. And although Jan said that it was still mostly about the chess, I think Ding was more on the spot with his assessment that it is probably about nerves, and that although the quality was low, right now it's going to be a battle of who can hold it together best. And we can only imagine how tired you are after 12 games of back and forth, tough, a lot of emotions, especially, and we know that emotional games where you're losing or you're winning, or there's those emotional swings that saps a lot of your nervous energy. So they've had to deal with a lot of that throughout the match, multiple times by now. And today is like the culmination of all that crazy stuff. And I think today will be exhausting for both of them because Ding, he won, but for sure it sapped a lot of his emotional and mental energy because he also realized that he was on the verge of losing, and the excitement of winning as well. All of that is definitely an addition to the stress. For Jan, of course, yeah, I can't imagine how he feels. I mean, it must be completely heartbreaking, um, especially as he knows that he was winning. He felt it. We all knew that he was on the verge of winning that game, and it just fell apart at that super crucial moment when he was so close to the finish line, at least in this game and potentially in the entire match.
Yeah, and I mean, I just had a thought based on what you were saying before, Fabi, about this World Championship and how it's so decisive. Tanya, your question. I think this is a rarity, right? We're having a World Championship where the best player in the world is not taking part. And so we don't see maybe as accurate chess as we would if Magnus Carlsen were playing. That's no disrespect meant towards the players. It's just objective fact that Magnus Carlsen, he has been the best player for a long time now. He was the world champion. He decided not to take part. So it's been fun. It's a roller coaster ride, and I'm happy to be on it. But I think maybe for some out there, they're looking at this match and they're saying, I enjoy the fighting chess we're seeing. I like the decisive games, but maybe in some ways the world championship title is a bit diminished without Magnus Carlsen taking part. I'm not sure.
Food for thought there. But Robert, for me, this has been a really emotional day. I have to say, the kind of chess we saw, it just felt like excellent play by both these players. And no matter who you're rooting for in this World Championship match, your team Ding or your team Nepo, it just feels like today you've got a feel for Jan. It just felt absolutely heartbreaking to watch him in those last moments of the game. And indeed, he's got a tough task ahead of him. With two classical games, he has to overcome his own journey of today. He has to overcome all that happened in the game today, not only thinking about the leveled match that now means he has to start from scratch. Everything that he did, the big win that he had, taking the 1 point lead, keeping it pretty much till the very tail end of the match, and then staring at another win and then letting it slip. It's going to be a tough night for Team Nepo. His task is cut. It's not just about focusing on opening preparation tomorrow, but how important, Fabi, will also be the psychological aspect going into game 13.
Yeah, I think it's going to be super important, and that's why if I were to advise Jan, and I think that his seconds will probably advise him similarly in this way, that keep it under control. You know, of course, Jan can play super well. He can play at near perfect chess, as we saw a few games in a row, and also for pretty much the entirety of the game today, playing nearly perfect chess. But you just got to keep your emotions in check, and it cost him very dearly today. But it's still an even match. He has no reason to despair because he missed a big chance for sure to nearly win the match today. But it's still a 50-50 situation. Of course, it's going to be very tough, but you kind of want to approach it just like it's a clean slate, right? Like it's from game one, we have 2 games. It's a 2-game match. Forget about everything that happened previously, and short match followed by a short tiebreak. You know, it's either of these guys could be world champion in a few days. I wouldn't even venture to guess who at this point.
Had a topsy-turvy day of chess, and I want to give a big shout out to chat who joined us for this match. It's been amazing, Robert and Fabi, calling this out with you guys. You guys have been incredible breaking down the action that these world-class players have been bringing on, getting into their minds and calling it all out. So thank you, Robert. Thank you, Fabi. We will be back with game 13 action. Chess is beautiful, but equally brutal. And that's what we saw today. We leave you with the emotional roller coaster that was game 13.
For Ding Liren, I want to see him come out fighting, not make a peaceful, solid draw. He really needs to throw everything but the kitchen sink at Jan Nepomniachtchi today.
I have a feeling 1d4. Come on, Ding. Do this for the chat. Do it for the commentators.
E3. Oh my goodness, he is playing a quiet line.
This is known as the Cole, right? Bishop D7.
I see, Robert, that it's a bad move.
This is honestly a great outcome from the opening for Ding Liren. I am very, very shocked by the fact that he played Bishop B7 and then Bishop G4. It feels like he just gave Ding a tempo for free.
It looks like Jan's the one who's feeling the comfort in this position. I'm getting worried for Ding here. He needs to make a move, and second, he needs to show more confidence in this position.
It sometimes feels unfair in chess when you're like, wait, I thought that I made a good move. Why am I getting a question mark? But this was a mistake. This is a really, really great move from Jan Nepomniachtchi. He played it quickly, he played it confidently, and it's just one of those moves that you need to make in order to become a world champion. Maybe there was a bishop takes g6 that should have been played first, but he plays bishop b8, does Jan Nepomniachtchi, and oh my goodness!
Whoa!
The evaluation bar went all the way up in Ding Liren's favor. Queen b7 was Ding's choice. He also doesn't find the best move.
I have to say, these guys are just fried at this point. Like, they've stopped calculating. He plays F5?
F5.
It's
On
losing the
board.
spot!
And oh my gosh,
Rook takes E6?
drops another pawn.
What does
That's
he
the
want?
third pawn that Jan gives up.
Quickly played and resigned.
Handshakes, and that is it. B6 on the board. Ding Liren comes back in the match. We've got a match on our hands.